Coming up on this Monday edition of Daybreak, South Korea warns North Korea against conducting a fourth nuclear test. This after Pyongyang threatened to carry out another test following the UN's condemnation of its recent ballistic missile launch. Meeting for their first high-level government talks in 16 months. North Korea and Japan agree to work towards settling outstanding issues, standing in the way of their bilateral ties. Plus, the foreign ministers of the United States and Russia are meeting in Paris in the latest Ukraine crisis talks. Moscow has set out its demands for a neutral and federal Ukraine. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers here in Korea and around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Monday, March 31st here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, North Korea has threatened to carry out a new form of nuclear test in response to a UN condemnation of the regime's recent ballistic missile launches. South Korea answered Pyongyang's latest threat with a promise of its own. Seoul's foreign ministry spokesperson said Sunday that if the North were to carry out a fourth nuclear test, it would pay for its actions. Let's hear what the North Korean state news agency had to say on the matter.
It is absolutely intolerable that the UN Security Council, turning a blind eye to the United States' madcap nuclear war exercises, denounced the Korean People's Army's self-defensive rocket-launching drills and called them a violation of resolutions and a threat to international peace and security. We will take appropriate steps for a more diversified nuclear deterrence.
The statement also warned the United States that it would bear all responsibility for any catastrophic event on the Korean peninsula. North Korea has carried out 3 nuclear tests since 2006, the last one coming in February of last year. Local experts in Seoul say North Korea is likely trying to continue to ramp up tensions on the peninsula until joint military exercises between South Korea and the US end in mid-April. So as we can see, all these threats are swirling around, but there appears to be physical evidence North Korea is readying for another series of nuclear tests at its Punggye-ri test site. According to 38 North, a website run by the US Korea Institute at Johns Hopkins University, recent tunnel excavation patterns show North Korea could be preparing to carry out 2 or more tests soon. The recent tunnels at Punggye-ri show Pyongyang may be conducting some kind of tests in drifts that branch off a main tunnel, similar to methods used in Russia and China. Recent satellite imagery shows the mountains north and south of the site have been excavated into complexes that could allow multiple tests. Now, experts are busy interpreting what North Korea's new form of nuclear test could actually be. While some say Pyongyang could be making an exaggerated threat to use as a bargaining chip for negotiations, others speculate the North may have finished the process of nuclear warhead miniaturization. Now, Kim Min-ji reports.
Experts have given 3 possible scenarios for what North Korea means by new form of nuclear test. Pyongyang on Sunday threatened to carry out a new form of test over the UN Security Council's rebuke of its recent ballistic missile launches. First, experts say the North statement can mean that it will carry out nuclear tests at any possible site, whether that be land, air, or underwater, as well as its usual underground facilities. However, considering the dangers such as radioactive fallout as well as condemnation from the international community, that scenario doesn't look likely. Another possible interpretation is using uranium bombs. So far, Pyongyang is believed to have used plutonium-based bombs in its nuclear test, but this new form of nuclear test could mean it will use uranium in the future.
We can say there are possibilities North Korea will carry out a nuclear test using uranium if their uranium enrichment program has been successful.
Although lighter than plutonium, uranium is considered much more powerful. However, others point out that it can mean the North has completed the miniaturization process of its nuclear warheads. Last year, the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency also said it believed Pyongyang was now able to miniaturize its warheads to mount its ballistic missiles. What's worse is that the North has already completed preparations for another nuclear test.
North Korea is prepared for an underground nuclear test at the Punggye-ri site. However, there are no imminent signs that they will carry out the test.
Attention is now on whether North Korea is using the new form as a bargaining chip for negotiations or whether it will really carry out a new form of test. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, when North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's younger sister made her debut on the public stage early this month, many wondered what role she would fill within the regime. Well, now we know. A source familiar with North Korean affairs said Sunday that Kim Yo-jong was appointed as the chief secretary of the ruling Workers' Party in the first half of 2013. The position requires purchasing daily necessities for the leadership and his family, but does not include taking part in policy decisions. The nomination of a family member to the post comes as a surprise, as it's always been held by a close aide to the leader. It's being seen as another attempt by Kim Jong-un to consolidate his power. Kim Yo-jong was thrust into the public eye on March 9th when she was seen standing alongside her brother as he voted in elections for the nation's rubber stamp parliament. The repatriation of abducted Japanese nationals and an easing of economic sanctions dominated discussions Sunday at the first high-level government talks between North Korea and Japan in nearly a year and a half. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
North Korea and Japan held their first government-to-government talks in more than a year inside the North Korean embassy in Beijing on Sunday. On the first day of the two-day talks, the Japanese delegation led by Junichi Ihara, chief of the Asian and Oceanian Affairs Bureau at Japan's Foreign Ministry, called for the repatriation of Japanese nationals abducted by North Korea in the 1970s and 80s. The North Korean delegation is being led by Song Il-ho, its ambassador for handling relations with Japan. He's asking for an easing of economic sanctions that were imposed by Japan after the North fired long-range ballistic missiles in 2006. Tokyo had earlier stated that it would be willing to gradually ease sanctions if Pyongyang demonstrates a sincere attempt to solve the repatriation issue. But they'll first have to come to an agreement on the figures. Japan says 17 Japanese nationals were abducted by North Korea and that only 5 had been allowed to return to Japan, leaving a dozen unaccounted for. North Korea says that 4 of the 12 individuals never set foot in the North and that the other 8 have since passed away. The most recent round of talks came in November 2012, but were halted after the North conducted missile tests. The two sides are expected to wrap up their 2 days of talks on Monday in the Japanese embassy in Beijing. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, the race to the June local elections is picking up speed. In the capital, the ruling party has 3 candidates vying to become mayor, while the co-leader of the nation's newest political party wants to hold sit-down talks with President Park Geun-hye. Our Connie Kim reports.
With a little over 2 months to go before the June local elections, the political landscape in Korea is heating up. In the race for mayor of Seoul, former Prime Minister Kim Hang-sik threw his hat back into the ring Sunday, 2 days after suspending his campaign. He stepped away on Friday after being criticized by the other 2 Saenuri candidates in the race, tycoon-turned-politician Chung Mong-jun and Supreme Council member Lee Hae-hun. In a press conference Sunday, Kim said he would finish the race and called on the Saenuri party to see to it that everyone competes fairly. On the other side of the political aisle, the co-leader of the newly formed New Politics Alliance for Democracy has asked for a meeting with President Park Geun-hye. Lawmaker An Chol-soo said he wants to talk with the president about how candidates are nominated for local elections. Back in 2012, both the ruling and opposition parties pledged to scrap the party-centered nomination systems that often get tangled up in bribery scandals, as those wanting to be nominated sometimes open up their pocketbooks to make it happen. However, the ruling Saenuri Party retreated from its pledge. It announced earlier this year it would instead be employing a bottom-up nomination system that involves both members of the party and the public. An urged President Park and the ruling Saenuri Party to keep their promise. The main opposition party held a meeting Sunday where it accepted recommendations for candidates in the June local elections. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And we are still awaiting an official response from the presidential office after An Chol-soo's call for talks with President Park. That's on abolishing the party nomination system for local elections. But analysts say the president will almost certainly suggest the ruling and opposition parties work the issue out in the National Assembly. Now, as the dust continues to settle on the nation's largest ever personal information leak, all banks, credit card companies and insurance companies will be banned from telemarketing from Tuesday. The nation's financial regulators said Sunday that companies will be prohibited from sending text messages or emails informing people of new financial products or services without prior agreement. The measures are intended to prevent further data breaches. In January, the personal information of more than 20 million bank and credit card users in Korea was leaked. Now, while the return of spring has many here in Korea rejoicing, they're less thrilled about the return of the yellow dust from China. Well, enter the Seoul Metropolitan Government because the city is going to be running a special response team on a trial basis for the month of April. Their role will be to keep the public aware of rising dust levels through text messages and announcements in public and private buildings when the level of dust particles in the air exceeds 170 micrograms per cubic meter. Now, there's a new landmark in Seoul, the Dongdaemun Design Plaza. It opened early this month and it's quickly established itself as a go-to site for cultural events. Our Shin Se-min takes a closer look at the capital's new multi-purpose complex.
This was just a peek of the 2014 Fall and Winter Seoul Fashion Week that closed its curtain this week at Seoul's newest landmark, Dongdaemun Design Plaza. It was the first of many events to come for the unique structure, which measures over 85,000 square meters. Over 45,000 aluminum panels make up the exterior, making it look like a spaceship. The multi-purpose complex was designed by world-renowned architect Zaha Hadid, who filled the interior with a total of 15 spaces, which include exhibition rooms, a museum, and open courtyards with manicured lawns.
Although Dongdaemun Design Plaza is unquestionably unique, its construction cost has been the subject of criticism. More than $450 million were spent building this landmark, and some are skeptical it'll be able to live up to its steep price tag.
The building does add another cultural element to the trendy Dongdaemun district, but the cost of maintenance will be pricey, and taking a first look around, the building looks empty without much content. Calling it one of Seoul's numerous jewels, Seoul City Mayor Park Won-soon said the landmark has a potential to profits of 13 trillion won, or over $12 billion in just 2 decades. Money that will come from hosting various events and exhibitions.
What used to be Dongdaemun Stadium is now a design plaza. This landmark will pioneer the design sector by incorporating history, culture, and fashion. This landmark also works to up the standard of design in the region, eventually contributing to the global design world.
Seoul Fashion Week was the first opportunity the plazas had to show off all it is and all it can become.
I believe that culture plays a key role when the country is looking to develop. And for those who are working in the name of culture, like myself, having a whole building designated especially for us to display art, I cannot express how much I appreciate the support.
Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now for a look at some of the international headlines we're following at this hour. We're going to pass it over to our Eunice Kim standing by at the News Center. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning to you, Mark. We'll begin in Paris this morning, where U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov have arrived to hold talks meant to ease tensions over Ukraine. Kerry changed course halfway home from Saudi Arabia Saturday as Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Barack Obama late last week agreed in a phone conversation their top diplomats should meet. Hours before the talks were to take place, Lavrov told Russian state TV that Ukraine should create a new constitution that sets up a neutral federal structure. He also said Russia has no intention of invading eastern Ukraine, a concern Western leaders have had, citing a massive buildup of Russian troops in the border area. The meeting of foreign ministers takes place ahead of a gathering of NATO foreign ministers in Brussels Tuesday and Wednesday. Meanwhile, now in its fourth week, the search continues for any sign of missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. A number of objects were spotted from the air over the weekend, including 4 orange items that match the color of the airliner, but none so far have been confirmed as belonging to the ill-fated Boeing 777. Meanwhile, dozens of family members of the missing arrived from China in Malaysia Sunday. The 35-person group is demanding proof Flight 370 sunk into the Indian Ocean and an apology from the Malaysian government for giving out confusing information. 2/3 of the 227 passengers on board were Chinese. The plane disappeared while en route to Beijing from Kuala Lumpur on March 8th. The Guinea government is struggling to contain the country's deadliest outbreak of the Ebola virus as the death toll caused by the latest epidemic reaches 70. The Guinean Health Ministry said its fatality rate has been at 63% in cases observed since the start of this year. Most had been reported in the southern parts of the country, but the capital of Conakry since last week has reported 8 cases of Ebola, including 1 fatality. Neighboring Senegal has closed its land border as a precaution against the contagion. The severe tropical virus leads to hemorrhagic fever, vomiting, diarrhea, and in severe cases, organ failure and unstoppable bleeding. In what's widely being seen as a litmus test, Turkey wrapped local elections on Sunday. Early poll results show Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan's Justice and Development Party in the lead with up to 48% of the votes at about a quarter of the votes counted. The Erdogan government had been riddled with corruption scandals since Turkey's mass protests in June. Twitter and YouTube have both been blocked in the run-up to the elections after an audio recording was posted on both that appeared to reveal that top Turkey officials were plotting to fake an attack against their own country as an excuse to wage war on Syria. Prime Minister Erdogan is looking to run for the presidency in August, when Turkish citizens will directly elect their leader for the first time.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off in the KBO, where the 2014 season just kicked off. And on Sunday, the Hanwha Eagles were able to beat the Lotte Giants 4-2, with the Samsung Lions beating Kia 8-5 and the SK Wyverns cruising past the Nexen Heroes 6-4. Meanwhile, a battle between the two sordid teams, the LG Twins and the Tusan Bears. Of course, going into the game here, another sold-out crowd in Chamche Stadium, but in the first inning, here's Lee Byung-gyu. 2-run single to left gives the LG Twins the early 2-0 lead. Next inning, LG up 2-1 with 1 man on. Josh Bell drives this one deep to right field. Welcome to Korea, his first home run of the season, and it's 4-1 LG. Fifth inning, more from LG, bases loaded. Lee Byung-gyu draws the walk here, 5-1. Next batter, Son Ju-in singles to center. This scores another, and it's 6-1. Check this out, bases loaded with captain Lee Jin-young. There it goes, back. Got a grand slam, and that seals the deal as the LG Twins splits the 2-game series with a 14-4 win. And staying with baseball, but over in the majors, where with the string of injuries for the LA Dodgers, Lee Hyun-jin will be back on the mound once again to go after his second win of the season. Now, Lee Hyun-jin, who's 1-0 with an ERA of 0.00 after his first game in Australia, he'll be facing off against the San Diego Padres and Andrew Kashner, who finished off the season with a record of 10-9 with an ERA of 3.09. And with the LA Dodgers already with 2 wins on the season, they look to go undefeated against the Padres team, who finished 4th place in the NL West last season. And moving over to Game 2 of the Men's V-League Championship Series between the Samsung Blue Fangs and the Hyundai Capital Skywalkers, with Hyundai Capital up 1-0 in the series. Of course, going into the match here, Hyundai Capital looking strong once again as they take the first set 25-19. But an exciting second set as both teams go back and forth before the Blue Fangs take the set 35-33. While the Skywalkers' Moon Sung-min and Liberman Algamez combine for 35 points, Samsung Hwaja's Leo Martinez lights it up with 47 points, helping his team take the next 2 sets and even the series with a 3-1 victory. And shifting over to some Sunday's K-League Classic action as the Incheon United and Jeonnam Dragons finished scoreless 0-0, with Jeju United and Gyeongnam FC drawing 1-1. Meanwhile, with Suwon Samsung Blue Wings taking on the Busan I-Park, let's take a look at the highlights. Of course, going into the game here, Suwon looking very aggressive in the first half as they get several chances, but Busan's goalkeeper Lee Bum-young doing a great job keeping them in check. Second half, Suwon continues their aggressive offense and still unable to score, though, until the 86th minute of the match. The North Korean Wayne Rooney Chundae scores the first goal of the match, giving Suwon the lead and the win as Suwon takes this match 1-0. And now finishing things off with the 2014 Malaysian Grand Prix, and what a day for Mercedes Racing as 2 of their drivers finished first and second on the day. Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton, who won pole position on Saturday, came back strong on Sunday as he finished first, claiming his first win of the season, with his teammate Nico Rosberg finishing second after winning the Australian Grand Prix. Meanwhile, defending champion Sebastian Vettel Red Bull Racing finished in 3rd place. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good Monday morning to you. I'm Lee Ji-hyun with your latest weather forecast. Well, as we just saw on our video clip, if you're outside this weekend, there were cherry blossoms nearly in full bloom in many places here in the capital, which is very rare to see them this early. Well, as a matter of fact, it's the earliest bloom to be observed since the KMA started to record the cherry blossom blooming dates. And of course, this relatively warm weather we've been having accelerated the dates of cherry blossom blooming. And it looks like we should continue to have this mild condition today, with temperatures hovering nearly 20 degrees Celsius across the region under mostly to partly sunny skies. But there are a few patches of fog in the west and south coast this morning, which is causing low visibility, so please watch out on the roads. So do keep that in mind, and let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The morning low in Seoul is starting out at 10, and afternoon high in the capital will be a bit higher than yesterday, soaring to 21, while Gwangju and Busan should top out at 22 and 19 respectively. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like down on Jeju and Daejeon will peak to 17 and 20, while the top temperature on Mount Kumgang will be at 12. Well, that's all I have for you at this hour. Enjoy your morning commute and hope you have a wonderful day.
Well, thank you very much, Jion, for the weather there. And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Korea Today is coming up in about 30 minutes' time. And we'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.